Hello friends, and welcome back to Background Historian. Tonight we've got a special video for you, one that explores a unique aspect of Eastern Asia. If you're into samurai, sit back, relax, and like I always say, feel free to doze off and immerse yourself into history. Without further ado, let's begin. Part 1: Dawn in the Land of the Rising Sun. The soft rustling of bamboo, the distant croak of frogs echoing from a misty pond, and the scent of incense curling through a paper-screened room. It is morning in Edo period Japan. The sky is pale with first light, and a samurai rises. Let's follow him, quietly, of course. Samurai are light sleepers. They tend to sleep with their sword just an arm's reach away, and you don't want to startle someone trained to respond in a single heartbeat. Our samurai's name tonight is Takeda Haruki. A mid-ranking retainer to a local daimyo, Haruki isn't wealthy, but he is respected. He wears a simple grey kimono, his head freshly shaved at the crown in the traditional chonmage style. The day is just beginning. And no, there is no snooze button. Training begins before breakfast. He starts with subui, repeated sword swings. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. His wooden bokken sword cuts through the morning air in smooth arcs. To the casual observer, it looks like the same movement, over and over again. But every swing is deliberate. Breath, balance, and timing. If you're falling asleep right now, just know, you'd be dead by swing 5. And then, it's off to Zen meditation. You might be thinking, finally, a break. But kneeling in Caesar posture for 30 minutes on a tatami mat isn't exactly cozy. Your legs fall asleep faster than you do. Samurai endured it because sharpening the mind was as vital as sharpening the blade. Now, breakfast. Simple fare. Rice. Pickled vegetables. Maybe a slice of grilled fish if it's a good day. Haruki eats slowly. Mindfully. He's not scrolling a phone or watching YouTube while chewing, though if he could, he'd probably be watching a sword polishing tutorial. Part 2: The weight of the sword, duty, discipline, and the delicate art of not looking awkward. Our samurai, Haruki, has finished his breakfast. The bowl is returned. The rice grains, every last one, have been eaten. Wasting food in Edo period Japan wasn't just rude, it was dishonorable. And when you live in a strict hierarchy built on reputation, even your leftovers say something about you. Next comes daily duty. Not all samurai spent their time charging into battle. In fact, most didn't. The age of constant war, the Sengo Jidai, was largely over by the 1600s. So now, our samurai must navigate a different kind of battlefield, one made of paperwork, etiquette, and political subtlety. Haruki puts on his hakama, the pleated trousers that swish like curtains when he walks. His hair is tied back, his short sword, the wakizashi, tucked neatly at his side. His long sword, the revered katana, is kept within reach, but today, he won't need it for anything more than ceremony. He walks toward the local lord's estate, where his duties begin. Now imagine, you're trained your whole life to fight with precision, grace, and deadly speed, only to be asked to record rice inventories and translate correspondence from Kyoto. There's a saying that the pen is mightier than the sword, but for samurai like Haruki, it's more like the brush will give you hand cramps before the blade ever draws blood. The art of appearance. In the castle, everything is formal. Bow too deeply and you appear weak. Bow too shallow and you risk offense. Walk too slowly and you seem lazy. Walk too fast and you seem reckless. There's a precise cadence to being taken seriously. Haruki must watch his posture, his sleeves, even the placement of his eyes. Looking too long at a superior could be disrespectful. Looking away too quickly could seem evasive. It's like being in a job interview, forever. He presents his report, bows, listens to instructions, and, for the next few hours, helps mediate a dispute between local rice farmers. Yes, the sword is still at his side, but what wins the day isn't steel, it's calm words and measured tones. A true samurai is more than a warrior. He is a servant of order, a steward of stability, a reminder to others that calmness is the real blade. The classroom never closes. Even when Haruki returns home in the late afternoon, his work is not done. He settles cross-legged by the candlelight and begins to read. His reading list might include Confucian classics, Zen poetry, or military strategy manuals like the Book of Five Rings. And let's be honest, he doesn't skim. This isn't a quick 10 samurai secrets for success blog post. Samurai education was serious. Calligraphy, poetry, and history were essential. You were expected to quote Chinese philosophers by memory and write haiku that could make even the sternest lord shed a tear. Or at least pretend to. Writing beautifully was a kind of status. Even your brushstrokes reflected your inner discipline. Sloppy ink? Sloppy heart. And if your kanji looked like spilled noodles? Maybe it was time to meditate more. The unspoken burden. Behind the calm exterior, Haruki, like many samurai, carries weight that few see. He is expected to be fearless, faultless, unshakable. But he is also human. Maybe he misses home. Maybe he lost friends in past battles. Maybe, just maybe, he's tired of fixing his top knot every morning only for the wind to undo it by noon. There's a deep pressure in always being seen as a model of honor. One mistake, one misjudged word, one moment of public emotion, and the consequences could be severe. A samurai's reputation was everything. Lose it, and you might be expected to take your own life in seppuku to restore your family's name. And yet, Haruki carries it all. Quietly. Gracefully. As countless others did. As night begins to fall, lanterns flicker to life along the wooden walkways of his village. Crickets sing. A warm breeze stirs the cherry trees. Haruki changes into a looser robe, steps outside, and walks the garden paths in silence. Tomorrow, there may be training. Or dueling. Or a summons from his lord. But for now, there is stillness. And perhaps, just perhaps, a warm cup of tea before bed. Because even the strongest swordsman deserves a little peace. Part 3, Steel and Silence, the Art of Combat Without Chaos. The moon hangs quietly over the rooftops of Haruki's village. Inside the wooden walls of his home, he sleeps on a thin futon beside his sword. It rests in its scabbard just inches away. Samurai don't sleep deeply. Even in rest, the body remembers. The ears stay open. The breath remains soft. The hand occasionally brushes the tsuka, the hilt, out of habit. Because when you live by the sword, you learn not to trust silence. It's a lesson learned by every samurai who's been startled by the wind rattling a door. But tonight, the wind is gentle. And tomorrow, Haruki will train. Training begins before the world wakes. Long before the merchants open their shops or farmers rise to till the fields, Haruki steps barefoot onto the DJ floor. The wood is cool. Outside, the light is only beginning to change. He begins with kata, choreographed forms. Sword in hand, body squared, he moves with the precision of a dancer and the intensity of a storm held in suspension. These movements have been passed down for generations, teacher to student, father to son, and now, from Haruki to his own eager apprentice. You might think practicing the same forms over and over again would be boring. It isn't. Each repetition is an opportunity to discover something new, a shift in balance, a smoother draw, a quieter step. It's not just about muscle, it's about mind. You don't train to fight. You train so you don't have to. The sword is an extension of the soul. Haruki's weapon, his katana, is not just a tool. It's treated with almost spiritual reverence. The blade was forged with care, folded hundreds of times by a master smith. It is cleaned regularly, all to prevent rust, and never touched without purpose. Drawing the sword is itself an art called ai-jutsu, the practice of striking as you unsheathe. Haruki practices this over and over. In one fluid motion, the blade is out, through the air, and back in its scabbard. Blink, and you'll miss it. The sound is almost imperceptible, like a breeze slicing through leaves. And if you're wondering, yes, he has accidentally sliced the hem of his robe before. Every samurai has. It's not something they talk about. Unless they're among friends. Or drunk. Archery, zen with a bowstring. After sword work, Haruki switches to a longbow, the yumi. Japanese archery isn't just about hitting the target, it's about the ritual. The bow is tall, asymmetrical, and often taller than the archer. Haruki steps into position with great care. Every motion, narking the arrow, drawing the string, releasing, is done with breath control and calm mind. The style is called KYD, literally to the way of the bow. Some say it's the closest a samurai comes to meditation while standing. The goal is not to hit the target, but to become the kind of person who would. Still, Haruki very much likes hitting the target. Mounted combat, the thunder beneath the blade. Training doesn't end on the ground. Haruki's horse, a stout but strong steed named Sora, waits outside the paddock. Mounted training includes spear techniques, archery on horseback, and battlefield coordination. Riding at full gallop while hitting a target with a bow is, well, not relaxing. But it is breathtaking. Imagine leaning into the wind, the thump of hooves beneath you, and a clean, practiced draw of the bowstring as the world narrows into a single point, the center of a wooden target rushing past in a blur. The aim is instinct. The trust in the horse is absolute. And if you fall off? Well, you get back up and pretend it was part of the drill. The weight of battle, rituals before war. When word of an upcoming conflict reaches the village, the energy shifts. Preparation begins not with panic, but with ritual. Haruki sharpens his blade slowly, with oil and cloth. His armor, yoroi, is checked and fastened. It's not as heavy as full European plate, but still enough to tire the legs and soak a kimono in sweat. Each piece has a place. Each knot tells a story. The cords are pulled tight, but not too tight. You want to move, not pass out. Then comes the farewell writing. Yes, farewell writing. Samurai often wrote death poems before battle, short, reflective, and beautiful. Haruki has written many. He stores them in a lacquered box in case he doesn't return. The poems are never boastful, never bitter. Just a final whisper in ink. Here's one he wrote once. Steel meets silence. A crane flies into the wind. I draw, and vanish. And you thought your morning affirmations were deep. But not all days end in blood. More often than not, the battle doesn't come. Or if it does, it's delayed. Resolved in negotiation. Fought and forgotten before Haruki even arrives. In many ways, the samurai trains for a war that may never come, but must always be ready for it. It's the paradox of the warrior's path, to be sharp but never cut, ready but never rash, disciplined but human. And as the sun dips low, casting golden light across the rice fields, Haruki removes his armor. He bows once to the DJ floor. He lets his hand rest on the scabbard of his sword. Tomorrow, he will do it all again. Part 4. Beneath the armor, the soul of a samurai. The armor comes off. The cords are untied. The lacquered plates are unfastened. The layers of cloth, sweat-soaked and heavy, are folded away for another day. And what remains is simply a man. Haruki stands barefoot in his quarters, staring into the flickering glow of an oil lamp. His sword rests nearby. His home, but only in body. His mind lingers elsewhere, on questions without answers, on roads not taken, and on a bowl of hot miso soup that would really hit the spot right now. Even warriors get hungry. But beyond hunger and duty, samurai were humans navigating a life of contradictions. Haruki was expected to be fierce and gentle, unyielding and adaptable, stoic but deeply loyal to those he loved. The code of Bushido, the way of the warrior, wasn't just a military code. It was a way of living and of dying on friendship. Contrary to the image of solitary swordsman wandering alone beneath cherry blossoms, though that does sound poetic, samurai life was deeply communal. Haruki had brothers in arms. Men he trained with, fought beside, and drank far too much sake with on nights when battles were won or tensions ran high. They shared meals, armor repair kits, and sometimes embarrassing stories about falling off horses in front of senior lords. Friendship among samurai was often built through shared hardship. There was a deep bond in sweating through drills together or surviving a rain-soaked march through leech-filled rice paddies. And yes, they joked. Stoic doesn't mean humorless. In fact, samurai humor could be dry, biting, and clever. One famous saying after a bad archery shot was, "Perhaps the arrow thought better of it." And when someone polished their blade too much, "It's so clean, I can see my dictionary in it." Ouch! On love and marriage. Haruki's marriage was arranged, like most were. Love wasn't the starting point, it was the goal that came later. His wife, Aiko, was the daughter of a neighboring official. Their union was part alliance, part practicality, and, over time, something much more. She was quiet, observant, and terrifyingly good at Go, the strategy games samurai used to sharpen their minds. Haruki lost every match. Graciously, of course. Mostly. But love, in samurai life, was often unspoken. Feelings were revealed in gestures, the way tea was poured, a poem left on the windowsill, a repaired sleeve done just right. Saying "I love you" wasn't common. But leaving someone the last piece of grilled eel? That was a grand romantic gesture. On isolation. Despite the rituals and the camaraderie, samurai life could be deeply lonely. The higher your rank, the more watched you were. The more perfect your posture, your silence, your choices had to be. A misstep could cost you your standing. Or your life. The pressure to appear invulnerable was immense. Haruki often found solace in gardens. Stone paths. Quiet ponds. Wind through bamboo. The gardens were carefully designed, but never flashy. Simplicity was beauty. Stillness was power. Here, Haruki would walk slowly, breathing with each step. Watching koi drift. Letting the tension slide from his shoulders. And once, just once, he slipped on a mossy rock and fell into the pond. No one saw. Except the koi. And they've promised to keep his secret. On legacy. A samurai did not fight for fame, though tales were often told. He fought for honor, which was more fragile than steel. Haruki knew his actions shaped how his descendants would be remembered. His loyalty wasn't just to his lord, it was to his ancestors, his children, and the name he would leave behind. Even a whisper of disgrace could tarnish everything. So he kept a journal. Wrote poems. Honored birthdays of those long past. His life was not just battle and blade. It was a thread in a larger story, and he tried to keep that thread unbroken. A quiet nightfall. The moon rises higher now, bathing the landscape in silver. Inside, Haruki sits by a low table. Aiko brings tea. They sip in silence. No words are needed. Outside, the crickets sing. A wind chime gently sways. Tomorrow may bring training. Or peace. Or conflict. He cannot know. But tonight? There is warmth. There is breath. There is rest. And perhaps, in the soft folds of sleep, the warrior may finally put down his sword, not just in body, but in spirit. Part 5, The Last Breath of the Blade, Philosophy, Mortality, and the End of an Era. The seasons turn. Plum blossoms bloom and fall. Rivers rise and recede. Footsteps fade on garden stones, and stories once whispered around the fire become ash carried off on the wind. Even the samurai, for all their discipline and valor, could not escape time. Haruki grows older. His strikes are still fast, but not as fluid. His joints stiffen on cold mornings. His sparring sessions end sooner than they used to. He doesn't mind. He laughs more now. And he's found that sometimes, watching the wind move through the trees is more instructive than another kata. As he enters the later chapters of life, he turns more and more to philosophy. The texts of Zen masters. The teachings of Confucius. And of course, the quiet clarity of the tea ceremony. There is no rush anymore. After all, one of the core truths taught to every samurai, quietly, but from a young age, is this. To carry a sword is to walk with death as a companion. On death and dignity. Samurai did not fear death. Or, at least, they were trained not to. Death was not the end, it was the fulfillment of a path. If done with dignity, honor, and service, then death was not failure. It was form. It was return. The same way cherry blossoms fall just as they reach their peak, so too was the way of the blade. That's why seppuku, ritual self-disembowelment, was practiced. It wasn't cruelty. It was an act of ultimate control, the final brushstroke on a life lived with precision. It wasn't common. But the fact that it was possible, that one might one day be asked to bow, breathe, and die on command, made every action weightier. Haruki doesn't dwell on it. But he keeps a blade by his writing table. Just in case. And no, it's not the sharpest one in the house. It's practical. But still symbolic. On simplicity and serenity. In his twilight years, Haruki finds joy in the simplest things. Warm rice. Ink that flows cleanly. A roof that doesn't leak during summer storms. He visits the nearby temple more often now, not as obligation, but as rhythm. He lights incense and bows. He watches monks sweep the paths, and wonders if they know they're performing swordsmanship, just slower, and with better posture. His grandchildren visit sometimes. He teaches them calligraphy. They ask to touch his sword. He lets them hold the scabbard, but never draw it. Not yet, he says. First, you must know how to be still. They giggle, confused, then return to their games. One day, they'll understand. The fall of the samurai. As Haruki enters old age, the world around him changes. Guns arrive. Trade expands. Western ships darken the horizon. The Tokugawa shogunate, which once brought peace, begins to fray. Whispers of rebellion and reform drift through the air like ash from a faraway fire. Eventually, the samurai class itself, once revered, feared, respected, is dismantled. Edicts are passed. Swords are forbidden. Stipends end. The Meiji Restoration abolishes the samurai as a social order. Many become civil servants. Others resist and fall. A few vanish into remote mountains, blades still hidden beneath their robes. Haruki, now gray-haired and slow-moving, watches it all unfold with quiet sadness. He does not resist. But one day, when he is asked to surrender his swords, he bows, and offers the katana he's carried since youth. Then, silently, he reaches into his sleeve and hands over something else. A single poem, written with brush and ink, folded with care. The blade sleeps now. But the path remains beneath the foot. I walk with empty hands. On echoes and afterlife. Haruki's house grows quiet. His days are short. His nights long. Sometimes he dreams of training halls, galloping horses, and battles that never happened. Other times, he dreams of still ponds, laughter, and rice that never burned. Eventually, he passes in his sleep. Sitting upright in meditation posture, his hands at rest. No grand send-off. No public mourning. Just a simple burial. And the planting of a cherry tree nearby. But his journals remain. His brushwork is kept by his children. And when his grandson becomes a teacher, he hangs Haruki's menkyo, his certificate of mastery, on the wall behind his desk. It is yellowed. The ink faded. But the path, as Haruki once said, remains. Thank you for following along on the descriptive and immersive life of a samurai in ancient Japan. Now, let's transition into some fun facts surrounding ancient Japan and the life of samurais. Part 1: Unexpected Truths Beneath the Katana. 1. Samurai didn't always wear armor, they loved their casual robes. When not in battle, samurai wore simple, flowing garments called kimono, often made of cotton or silk. You'd think these elite warriors would stomp around in armor 24/7, but really, they preferred comfort, especially after a long day of pretending not to fall asleep during calligraphy lessons. 2. The katana wasn't their first sword. Before the katana became iconic, early samurai carried a curved blade called a tachi. It hung edge down from the belt and was longer than the katana. Eventually, the katana's easier draw made it more popular, plus, it looked really cool when tucked into the belt just right. 3. Samurai bathed often, sometimes more than you do. Cleanliness was a big deal in Japanese culture. Bathing in hot water, known as ofuro, was part ritual, part relaxation. Samurai weren't squeaky clean monks, but they valued order, grooming, and, yes, a proper soak. 4. They had a word just for duty that overrides everything else. That word is giri. It means obligation, responsibility, or honor-bound duty. It could compel a samurai to fight, forgive, or sacrifice depending on what honor demanded. Basically, giri was the reason behind a lot of drama, and a lot of internal monologues. 5. Some samurai were poets first, warriors second. Yes, they trained to kill. But many also wrote stunning poetry. Haiku, tanka, and death poems were common among warrior classes. Their words could be more piercing than their blades, especially when describing a falling leaf or the lonely sound of a distant flute. 6. Their top knots had purpose and peril. The famous chonmage hairstyle was partly aesthetic, but it also helped keep a samurai's helmet secure. If your top knot was cut off, that was a huge disgrace. Think of it like being publicly unfollowed in front of your entire clan. 7. Armor was made to rattle, just a little. Samurai armor was constructed with lacquered plates and cords, but a little jingle here and there wasn't uncommon. The sound could intimidate enemies. Imagine hearing the low clack of footsteps and faint rustling in the mist. That wasn't wind. That was your problem arriving. 8. Archery was more respected than swordplay, for centuries. Long before the katana took center stage, the bow and arrow were considered the true marks of a noble warrior. Some even saw the sword as too violent or personal. With archery, you defeated your opponent from a calm distance, and with better posture. 9. Samurai could be bureaucrats, too. Not every samurai swung swords. Many held office jobs in castle administrations. They handled taxes, land records, and legal disputes. So yes, some samurai spent their days deciding how much rice a farmer owed. Still dangerous, just less flashy. 10. Female samurai existed, and they were fierce. Known as onobugeisha, these warrior women trained in combat, archery, and sometimes led armies. One famous example is Tomo Gozen, who allegedly decapitated enemies while riding on horseback. She's basically what happens when you mix a poet with a wrecking ball. Part 2: Swords, Sake, and the Secret Lives of Samurai. 11. Samurai couldn't just draw their sword whenever they wanted. It was illegal to draw your katana in public unless you were ready to use it. Drawing without a proper reason could lead to punishment, or death. So no, samurai didn't casually pull out their swords to slice fruit or gesture dramatically during arguments. Sadly. 12. Samurai loved their tea, and took it very, very seriously. The tea ceremony, or chanoyu, was a highly ritualized event. Samurai were often trained in its art. Every movement, pouring, whisking, bowing, was practiced with care. If you think spilling coffee is embarrassing, imagine messing up your lord's tea ceremony. 13. They practiced with wooden swords that could still knock you out. The bokken, a wooden training sword, wasn't just a toy. It could break bones, crack ribs, and leave bruises that lasted longer than some careers. Famous swordsman Miyamoto Musashi even fought and won real duels with a wooden sword. Talk about overachieving. 14. Being polite was practically a martial art. Samurai followed strict codes of etiquette. Bowing, seating order, even how you folded your legs, everything mattered. Disrespect, even accidental, could cause feuds. It's a good thing they didn't have texting, or someone would have been decapitated for leaving a message unread. 15. The word samurai means to serve. Not to fight, or to conquer, but to serve. Loyalty to one's lord, clan, and code came before all else. The sword was simply an extension of that duty. 16. Samurai carried 2 swords, but only one was used in battle. The Daish set, 1 long katana and 1 short wakizashi, was a mark of status. The katana was used in combat, while the wakizashi served as a side-arm, a backup, and, sometimes, a blade for ceremonial suicide. A heavy weight for a small sword. 17. They were obsessed with balance. In swordsmanship, tea, poetry, architecture, balance was everything. Even gardens were designed asymmetrically on purpose. A crooked stone path or off-center tree made the space feel more natural. Basically, samurai invented "it's not messy, it's artful chaos." 18. They studied the art of not fighting. Many samurai studied Zen Buddhism and Confucianism, seeking peace of mind and moral clarity. The idea was that by mastering themselves, they'd never need to master anyone else. But just in case, they still kept their sword sharp. 19. Sake was for more than drinking. Sake was used in religious offerings, purification rituals, and even alliance ceremonies. When 2 samurai shared sake from the same cup, they became sake-sworn brothers. Which sounds beautiful, until someone spills it on your armor. 20. There was a war fan, and yes, it could hurt you. The tessen, a folding iron war fan, was used when carrying swords wasn't allowed. It could block blades or break bones with a flick of the wrist. Imagine walking into court thinking you're safe, only to be clapped into next week by a samurai's stylish fan. Part 3. Shadows, Spirits, and Samurai who did things differently. 21. Not all black-clad figures were ninjas. The iconic all-black ninja outfit? It came from kabuki theater, not history. Real ninja wore whatever helped them blend in, often farmers' clothing, monks' robes, or merchant garb. It turns out the best way to vanish is to look completely normal. You might be sleeping next to one right now. Just kidding. Probably. 22. Ninjas and samurai did not get along, except when they did. Samurai viewed ninja with suspicion, spies, saboteurs, and tricksters. But they also hired them. Like that coworker you don't trust but still text when your printer breaks. 23. Miyamoto Musashi once showed up to a duel late, on purpose. Legend says Musashi, the greatest swordsman in Japanese history, showed up hours late to one of his most famous duels, letting his opponent stew in frustration. Then he beat him with a wooden sword he carved from a boat oar. Talk about a dramatic entrance. 24. Some samurai preferred spears over swords. The yari, or spear, was actually more effective on the battlefield than a sword. It kept enemies at bay, worked well in formations, and didn't require dramatic pose work before swinging. But let's be honest, katanas got the movie deals. 25. Samurai cats were a thing, sort of. In Edo period Japan, cats were believed to ward off rats and bad spirits. Some samurai kept them around as companions, some even adorned in little armor in paintings. Were they practical? Not really. Adorable? Absolutely. 26. Castles were built to confuse intruders. Japanese castles like Himeji were full of traps, false walls, hidden staircases, even left-turn-only layouts to disorient attackers. It was like walking through an escape room designed by a paranoid architect with a love for mazes. 27. The floors could squeak on purpose. Some castles used nightingale floors, specially constructed wood that chirped softly when stepped on, warning of intruders. No ninja could sneak past that without sounding like a flock of irritated birds. 28. Samurai believed in ghosts, strongly. Ire, or vengeful spirits, were said to haunt the battlefield, hover in forests, and visit dishonorable men at night. A lot of samurai slept with charms nearby or, when traveling, simply avoided places where too many people had, well, left their heads. 29. Samurai had special death rituals just in case. Some samurai carried a short death poem in their sleeve. Others kept a final will or talisman on their person at all times. It wasn't morbid, it was preparation. A tidy death was part of a tidy life. It's basically the samurai version of leaving a clean browser history. 30. The most famous female samurai may have escaped into legend. Tomo Gozen was said to have ridden into battle, taken heads, and evaded capture after her lord's defeat. Some say she became a nun. Others say she vanished into the mountains. Either way, she had more plot twists than a whole season of streaming TV. Part 4. The quieter sides of steel, food, hobbies, and the gentle arts of samurai life. 31. Some samurai were obsessive gardeners. Zen gardens weren't just places to meditate, they were an art form. Samurai raked gravel into waves, placed stones to reflect mountains, and clipped bonsai trees as a reflection of inner discipline. If you've ever rearranged your living room furniture for peace of mind, you get it. 32. They had a favorite soup, and it was fermented. Miso soup was a staple of samurai diets. Fermented soybean paste stirred into warm broth, often with tofu, seaweed, or daikon radish. It was nourishing, calming, and easy to digest, perfect before a duel or, a nap. 33. Samurai wrote letters that were basically works of art. Calligraphy was considered a mirror of the soul. Samurai didn't just jot things down, they composed letters with poetic flourishes and practiced brushwork. Even a grocery list could look majestic if written by the right hand. Tofu. Rice. Death poem ink. 34. Some practiced ink painting as meditation. The art of sumii, black ink brush painting, was popular among samurai with more contemplative leanings. A few brushstrokes could become a mountain, or a pine tree, or a crane. And if it looked like a lumpy cloud? That's just impermanence, friend. 35. They were early fans of the everything bowl. A dish called donburi, rice bowls topped with simmered meat, vegetables, or eggs, was common in later periods. Affordable, hearty, and easy to eat with chopsticks. Basically the ramen of its day, minus the Instagram filters. 36. Flutes were considered a warrior's instrument. The shakuhachi, a bamboo flute, wasn't just for monks. Samurai played it too. Its haunting, breathy notes were said to sharpen the mind and soothe the heart. The sound of wind through hollow reed, perfect for calming one's spirit or impressing a dinner guest. 37. Some samurai carried folding fans that were also swords. The gunsen and tessen were fans that could deflect blades or even cut flesh if needed. Elegant. Deadly. Ideal for both hot days and unexpected sword fights. And yet tragically not sold in modern gift shops. 38. Samurai liked to watch fireflies. Summer evenings in Japan meant fireflies, or hotaru. Samurai, and poets, and peasants would gather to watch them flicker above streams and rice paddies. A glowing reminder that beauty was fleeting, and peace always lived in small things. 39. Even warriors had favorite snacks. Dried fish, pickled plums, umeboshi, and roasted rice crackers, senbei, were common samurai snacks. Light, portable, and salty enough to keep you awake during long council meetings. Or to bribe your horse. 40. Swordsmiths considered blade making a sacred act. Forging a katana wasn't just work, it was ritual. Some smiths fasted and prayed before forging, purified themselves in rivers, and struck the metal to rhythms like a song. The sword wasn't a product. It was a spirit. A silent oath. A very, very sharp one. Part 5. Rituals, Reverence, and the Rhythm of a Samurai's World. 41. Samurai took shoe etiquette very seriously. You never, ever wore shoes inside a samurai's home. Doing so wasn't just rude, it was considered unrefined. Samurai were known to silently judge guests by how gracefully they stepped out of their sandals. Extra points if you didn't wobble. 42. Some samurai practiced ink seal signature art. In place of modern signatures, samurai used red hanko or inkan seals, carved with their name or clan crest. These were pressed into contracts, poetry, and even battlefield orders. Basically, ancient Japan's version of a verified blue checkmark. 43. Tooth blackening was a beauty ritual. In some eras, noble women, and occasionally high-ranking samurai, dyed their teeth black using a mixture called ohaguro. This was a mark of refinement, marriage, or adulthood. And yes, it was seen as attractive. Not everything ages well. 44. Samurai believed the sword had a spirit. The katana was more than a weapon, it was believed to hold part of its owner's soul. Some samurai even talked to their swords before battle. Not out of madness, but out of respect. Think of it like talking to your car before a long road trip. Just more poetic. 45. They kept seasonal poem calendars. Samurai often wrote seasonal poems, kigo, and kept collections of their favorites. These would reflect the changing world around them, blossoms, snow, frogs, or even the sound of sandals on a rainy path. Their journals read like peaceful nature documentaries. 46. Sword testing was a bit intense. To test the sharpness of a new blade, swordsmiths sometimes cut through bundles of straw, bamboo stalks, or, in darker cases, the bodies of executed criminals. Yes, that part's a little unsettling. But it made sure the blade was ready for war, and not just slicing peaches. 47. Samurai didn't smile in portraits, ever. Why so serious? Because smiling was considered childlike or frivolous in formal art. A samurai's portrait was about legacy and discipline, not charm. Though secretly? Some of them probably cracked up during the sitting. 48. Their names could change many times. Samurai often took on new names during life milestones, reaching adulthood, completing a training journey, serving a new lord, or performing a heroic deed. Imagine changing your username every time you passed a major exam. 49. Their armor had hidden meanings. The patterns, crests, and colors of samurai armor told stories, loyalty to a clan, spiritual beliefs, or even puns based on their names. Some designs had mythical animals or lightning bolts, not just for flair, but to inspire fear or protection in battle. Basically, ancient power suits. 50. Samurai didn't fear death. But they feared dishonor. To lose face was to lose everything. This is why seppuku, ritual suicide, was seen as a final act of redemption. Not out of despair, but to leave the world with dignity. A clean end. A complete circle. The way of the warrior was not to avoid death, but to meet it on one's own terms. Part 6. Echoes in Bamboo. The spirit of the samurai endures. 51. The samurai believed in living every day as if it were their last. A key belief in the samurai ethos, especially among Zen-influenced warriors, was the idea of Ishigo Ichi, or one moment, one meeting. Every encounter was unique, fleeting, and sacred. Even a cup of tea could be a once-in-a-lifetime event. You can feel that in a slow sip under a quiet sky. 52. Some carried tiny shrines in their sleeves. Tucked inside their robes, samurai sometimes carried protective amulets or tiny wooden tablets inscribed with Buddhist prayers. These weren't just for battle, they were for balance. A whisper of stillness tucked between armor plates. 53. Even in death, they took up little space. Samurai tombs were often simple. A stone. A family crest. A name. They didn't need statues or gilded halls. Just a peaceful place where moss could grow and birds might rest. Their stories lived not in monuments, but in memory. 54. The code of Bushido influenced modern Japanese values. While Bushido as we think of it was formalized later, its roots, the ideas of loyalty, humility, honor, and calm perseverance, can still be seen in Japanese culture today. From the bow of a shopkeeper to the quiet attention of a craftsman, echoes linger. 55. Martial arts were as much about breathing as fighting. Samurai practiced martial arts like kenjutsu, iaijutsu, and jujitsu, but victory wasn't just technique, it was presence. Breathing controlled emotion. Posture conveyed intent. The best strike, they said, was the one never needed. 56. Some samurai became monks after war. It wasn't uncommon for aging warriors to retire into Buddhist monasteries, exchanging blades for bells. There, they swept paths, tended gardens, and chanted prayers. A final chapter of peace, written with folded hands. 57. Samurai games included strategy and chance. Games like Go, Shogi, and even simple dice were common among samurai. They weren't just for fun, they were tools for sharpening the mind. And if you lost a match to your lord? Let's just say you smiled, bowed, and didn't demand a rematch. 58. The sound of bamboo in the wind was a favorite metaphor. In poems and Zen teachings, the rustle of bamboo became a symbol of strength through flexibility. Bend, don't break. The samurai didn't want to be immovable, they wanted to flow like water and whisper like wind through reeds. 59. You can still visit samurai homes today. Across Japan, preserved samurai houses still stand. Tatami mats, narrow corridors, tiny gardens of sand and stone. You can feel their presence in the stillness. And if you listen closely, the creak of a floorboard may carry footsteps long gone. 60. The samurai may be gone, but their spirit remains. The swords rest. The armor rusts. The horses are silent. But in every moment of quiet strength, in every act of patience, discipline, or grace, in every person who bows before they speak, or acts with honor when no one is watching, the spirit of the samurai breathes on. Well, that was fun. Next and lastly, we will explore the life and journey of an ancient Japan samurai trainer. Soothe your mind as we see what it takes to train a masterful samurai in the times of ancient Japan and turn a man into a disciplined, dangerous, and honorary warrior. Part 1. A morning of breath and bamboo. The sky above the mountains is the color of ash and plum blossom. The mist hangs low, curling between cedar trunks, and the cold stones outside Master Kenji's home glisten with dew. He has already been awake for some time. He always wakes before the bell. At 63, Kenji's body no longer rises with a warrior's snap, it creaks, it sighs. His knees hum like bowed strings, and his back is no longer the steel rod it once was. But he greets the pain like an old friend. With warmth. With routine. First, the tea. He prepares it quietly. The water boils in a small black kettle. The powdered matcha is whisked in a smooth, circular motion 8 times clockwise, 8 times counter. He does not drink yet. Instead, he carries the bowl to the open veranda and watches the mist drift down the valley. Somewhere in the village below, the baker's apprentice drops a pan with a clatter. Kenji smiles. Even a samurai cannot train a loaf of bread. His home is small. Tatami floors. Paper sliding doors. The dojo is just beside it, a wooden building older than some trees. And outside that, the training yard, a square of hard-packed earth bordered by stone lanterns and whispering bamboo. He will have students today. Just a handful. Some strong. Some clumsy. One who talks too much and another who speaks with his eyes instead of his mouth. Kenji has taught many like them. He remembers them all. He forgets none. But first, he sits. He kneels at the edge of the garden path, back straight, eyes half closed, and breathes. Inhale 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. This is where the training begins, not with a sword, but with stillness. If you cannot find peace without your blade, he once told a lord's son, you will not find it with one either. Part 2. Teaching without shouting, guiding without moving. The morning bell rings once, low and steady. Kenji rises from his meditation and brushes the dew from his knees. A small wind picks up, rustling the bamboo just beyond the training yard. He listens to it for a moment. He always does. It reminds him of the first lesson he ever received. A stiff tree cracks in a storm, his master once said. The bamboo bends. It lives. By the time he enters the DJ, 3 students have already arrived. 2 bow deeply at the door. The third forgets, then quickly remembers, then bows so fast he nearly loses his footing. Progress. Kenji nods to them, says nothing, and picks up the small hand bell beside the rack of wooden practice swords. It chimes once. Others begin to file in, 4 more. Then 2 late ones who run the last stretch and try to pretend they weren't. He raises an eyebrow at them, just slightly. No punishment. Not yet. They are learning. The floor is freshly swept. Sunlight spills through the paper panels in long strips. Their wooden swords, bakuto, rest in a line on the floor, each one clean and oiled. He trained them to do that, too. They begin, as always, with silence. No speaking. No warm-up stretches yet. Just kneeling in 2 rows, breathing. Eyes half closed. A slow descent into the room's stillness. He walks behind them, bare feet whispering on the floor. One student's shoulder is too high. He rests a hand there for just a moment, then lifts it away. The shoulder softens. Another is fidgeting. Nervous. Kenji says nothing. Instead, he kneels beside the boy and begins to breathe audibly, like a bellows in the winter wind. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. The boy mimics it. Within 3 cycles, his hands stop shaking. Words are clumsy, Kenji once wrote in his teaching scroll. Sometimes they bruise more than blades. But breath never lies. The forms of air and fire. After meditation, the lesson begins. Today's kata is from the fire sequence. A set of movements designed to build quickness, commitment, and fluid energy. The students form pairs and face one another. One strikes. The other receives. Again. And again. Kenji watches the rhythm unfold, wood clacks against wood. Some clean. Some chaotic. One student, a boy with too much shoulder and not enough hip, swings with his arms alone. Kenji approaches. He doesn't speak. Instead, he steps behind the student, places a hand on his lower back, and another on his lead knee. He gently rocks him back, just an inch. Then steps away. The next strike is smoother. The student doesn't even realize why. That's the goal. In the corner, 2 of the older students begin sparring too hard. The air grows tight. One grunts. The other begins to glare. Kenji clears his throat, not loudly, just enough. Then slowly kneels and begins to pour tea for himself on the mat at the edge of the room. The students freeze. They know what that means. It means, if you cannot strike kindly, sit and watch someone who can. The sword is not the lesson. After drills, the students gather around him in a semicircle. He doesn't sit like a king. He sits like the oldest among brothers, knees cracking, hand steady, voice low. He begins to speak. You wish to be fast, he says softly, but you still trip over your own thoughts. You swing to win, but your blade should not care about winning. It should care about being clean. About ending things, not prolonging them. The best strike does not land because you forced it. It lands because you waited and did not rush to fill a silence. One student raises a hand. Kenji nods. Master, the boy says, if we are never to strike in anger, what if anger is all we have? Kenji studies him for a moment. Then replies. Then do not pick up your sword yet. Pick up your broom. Sweep the DJ. Or carry water. Or go and sit beneath the pine trees until your breath feels like theirs. Only when your heart has weight and space together should your hands carry steel. There is silence after this. Not the kind born from fear. The kind born from listening. The midday bell. As the lesson ends, the students bow and file out into the courtyard. Their footsteps patter against the stone. Laughter returns. Muscles begin to ache. Wooden swords are carried under arms like sleeping cats. Kenji remains seated. One student, the quietest one, the one who almost never speaks, lingers. She kneels beside him. Sensei, she says softly. I think I found stillness today. Just for a breath. He turns to her, nods. That's all you need. The rest is practice. She bows. He bows in return. She leaves. And then he smiles, picks up his tea, and mutters to himself. Stillness, yes. But my knees still don't agree. Part 3, The Path Beneath Falling Leaves. The sandals make a soft slap against the path, muffled by earth and moss. Master Kenji walks alone, carrying a cloth-wrapped bundle beneath one arm, an old blade, dulled and chipped, waiting to be reforged. Not for himself, of course. His days of drawing steel in defense or in challenge are long behind him. No, this is for one of his students. A boy who does not yet understand the weight of a sword and still thinks it's about strength. Kenji walks slowly. He always does now. Not out of weakness, but out of preference. The trail winds gently through the forest behind the DJ, under a canopy of tall cedar, pine, and the yellowing brush of momiji, Japanese maple leaves that have begun their annual descent into fire. It is a warm day, but the air smells faintly of wood smoke and stone. He pauses as a dragonfly flits by, hovering near his shoulder, then darting ahead, zigzagging through shafts of light. Even the insects have better posture than I do, he mutters to no one, lips curling upward. At a bend in the trail, he stops again. There is an old shrine here, weathered wood, moss-grown, tucked beneath a crooked tree whose roots emerge like the backs of ancient hands. He presses his palms together and bows once. Not for prayer. Just for acknowledgement. A few steps later, he hears the rhythmic ping, ping, ping of hammer on steel. Ah, he breathes, still working. Or still pretending to. The forge of quiet fire. The swordsmither's hut is modest, but the forge within glows like a heartbeat in the shadowed interior. Its occupant, Tameji, is older than Kenji, and far louder. But the moment he sees his old friend at the entrance, he wipes the sweat from his brow, tosses his hammer into a bucket, and bows low. You came, he grins. Didn't think you'd walk all the way up here just to see this old wreck. Kenji bows in return. I came for your hands, not your face. Tamaji bursts into laughter, rough and scratchy like sand on parchment. It echoes across the trees. They sit together for a while, sipping rice water and watching the coals settle. Tamaji unwraps the sword Kenji has brought. He doesn't speak for several minutes. Just runs his fingers over the steel, feeling its flaws, its lines, its long-forgotten spirit. This one's seen fear, he finally says. And shame. And hope. It's like holding a memory that doesn't know if it wants to be remembered. Kenji nods. It belongs to a student, he says quietly. One who thinks a sharp edge is the same as readiness. Tamaji grunts. Doesn't know that dullness can still wound, eh? They both laugh at that, softly. Like men who have bled for truths they can now explain in a sentence. Reflections in Iron and Rain. As Tamaji works, Kenji watches. The old man folds the blade with practiced ease, drawing it out, folding again, striking and folding, again and again. Sparks fly like tiny orange butterflies. The sound is steady, meditative. Almost like breathing. You never married, Tamaji remarks, not unkindly. Still don't regret it. Kenji does not answer immediately. He watches a bead of sweat roll down the smith's brow and vanish into the forge light. I married discipline, he says eventually. And she is a jealous wife. Tamaji chuckles, but Kenji's smile lingers just a little longer. Not quite bitter. Not quite wistful. The rain begins softly outside, not a downpour, but the polite tapping of water on leaves and wooden eaves. They do not rush to cover anything. The forge remains hot. The air is humid and alive with quiet energy. This blade, Tamaji says after a time, will be better than new. It'll remember what it was. But it won't be what it was. Kenji stands slowly and bows. That's all I ever want from my students, he says. To become what they were never allowed to be. He places a small pouch of coin on the bench. Tamaji pushes it back with a shake of the head. Pay me when he earns it. The walk home. Kenji walks back in the late afternoon. The clouds are heavy but kind. The forest smells of wet bark and ash. A fox crosses his path, pauses to look at him, then darts into the ferns. He breathes deeply and mutters to himself again. Foxes don't care about old men with memories. Still, he feels lighter. And the sound of the hammer lingers in his ears like a blessing. Part 3, The Path Beneath Falling Leaves. The sandals make a soft slap against the path, muffled by earth and moss. Master Kenji walks alone, carrying a cloth-wrapped bundle beneath one arm, an old blade, dulled and chipped, waiting to be reforged. Not for himself, of course. His days of drawing steel in defense or in challenge are long behind him. No, this is for one of his students. A boy who does not yet understand the weight of a sword and still thinks it's about strength. Kenji walks slowly. He always does now. Not out of weakness, but out of preference. The trail winds gently through the forest behind the DJ, under a canopy of tall cedar, pine, and the yellowing brush of momiji, Japanese maple leaves that have begun their annual descent into fire. It is a warm day, but the air smells faintly of wood smoke and stone. He pauses as a dragonfly flits by, hovering near his shoulder, then darting ahead, zigzagging through shafts of light. Even the insects have better posture than I do, he mutters to no one, lips curling upward. At a bend in the trail, he stops again. There is an old shrine here, weathered wood, moss-grown, tucked beneath a crooked tree whose roots emerge like the backs of ancient hands. He presses his palms together and bows once. Not for prayer. Just for acknowledgement. A few steps later, he hears the rhythmic ping, ping, ping of hammer on steel. Ah, he breathes, still working. Or still pretending to. The forge of quiet fire. The swordsmith's hut is modest, but the forge within glows like a heartbeat in the shadowed interior. Its occupant, Tameji, is older than Kenji, and far louder. But the moment he sees his old friend at the entrance, he wipes the sweat from his brow, tosses his hammer into a bucket, and bows low. You came, he grins. Didn't think you'd walk all the way up here just to see this old wreck. Kenji bows in return. I came for your hands. Not your face. Tameji bursts into laughter, rough and scratchy like sand on parchment. It echoes across the trees. They sit together for a while, sipping rice water and watching the coals settle. Tameji unwraps the sword Kenji has brought. He doesn't speak for several minutes. Just runs his fingers over the steel, feeling its flaws, its lines, its long-forgotten spirit. This one seen fear, he finally says. And shame. And hope. It's like holding a memory that doesn't know if it wants to be remembered. Kenji nods. It belongs to a student, he says quietly. One who thinks a sharp edge is the same as readiness. Tameji grunts. Doesn't know that dullness can still wound, eh? They both laugh at that, softly. Like men who have bled for truths they can now explain in a sentence. Reflections in Iron and Rain. As Tameji works, Kenji watches. The old man folds the blade with practiced ease, drawing it out, folding again, striking and folding, again and again. Sparks fly like tiny orange butterflies. The sound is steady, meditative. Almost like breathing. You never married, Tameji remarks, not unkindly. Still don't regret it. Kenji does not answer immediately. He watches a bead of sweat roll down the smith's brow and vanish into the forge light. I married discipline, he says eventually. And she is a jealous wife. Tameji chuckles, but Kenji's smile lingers just a little longer. Not quite bitter. Not quite wistful. The rain begins softly outside, not a downpour, but the polite tapping of water on leaves and wooden eaves. They do not rush to cover anything. The forge remains hot. The air is humid and alive with quiet energy. This blade, Tameji says after a time, will be better than new. It'll remember what it was. But it won't be what it was. Kenji stands slowly and bows. That's all I ever want from my students, he says. To become what they were never allowed to be. He places a small pouch of coin on the bench. Tameji pushes it back with a shake of the head. Pay me when he earns it. The walk home. Kenji walks back in the late afternoon. The clouds are heavy but kind. The forest smells of wet bark and ash. A fox crosses his path, pauses to look at him, then darts into the ferns. He breathes deeply and mutters to himself again. Foxes don't care about old men with memories. Still, he feels lighter. And the sound of the hammer lingers in his ears like a blessing. Part 5, ghosts with footsteps, tea with shadows. The sun rises behind a veil of clouds. The rain from last night still beads on every blade of grass. In the DJ yard, a small bird hops between puddles. Kenji stands beneath the eaves with a dry cloth, slowly wiping down his bakuto. His shoulder aches today. Not sharply. Just enough to whisper. The kind of ache that says, "You've done this for too long, but not long enough to stop." He listens to the breeze and feels the quiet in his bones. But something is off. He turns his head slightly, he feels it before he hears it. Footsteps. Measured. Confident. They approach the front gate without hesitation. Whoever this is does not stop to admire the courtyard stones or the way the wind moves the lanterns. They already know this place. Kenji places the cloth down and steps into the sunlight, blinking once as the figure comes into view. A man in traveling robes. Late 50s. Clean shaven. Broad shoulders. And at his hip, tied with ceremonial silk, is a sword wrapped in cloth. Kenji's eyes narrow, just slightly. It's been a long time, Daigo. Rivals, not enemies. Daigo Katsu was once a fellow student under the same master. The two trained together as boys, sparred daily through adolescence, and eventually took very different paths. Daigo joined a lord's retinue and rose through the ranks, a commander in full armor. Kenji remained behind, to teach, to listen, to disappear. They had not spoken in over 20 years. Daigo bows politely. Just deep enough. Kenji returns it, slightly shallower. You've aged, Daigo says, though without insult. And you've lost your beard, Kenji replies. It scared the children, Daigo shrugs. They share a quiet laugh, more exhale than voice. Kenji gestures toward the small sitting room beside the DJ. They enter together. Floorboards creak in recognition. The tatami mats are freshly swept. A kettle is set upon the coals. The silence grows heavy with expectation, but Kenji does not break it. He pours the tea first. 2 cups. One for past grudges. One for present clarity. Daigo takes his with both hands and sips. Then, slowly, he places the wrapped sword on the mat before him. It belonged to my son, he says. He died 2 winters ago. Not in battle. A fever. Kenji does not speak. He trained with you once, long ago. Briefly. Before he followed me to the capital. He spoke of you with respect. I remember, Kenji says softly. He asked more questions than he swung. Daigo nods, his jaw tense. He takes another sip, then places both palms on the mat. I wish for you to train his son. My grandson. He is 10. Headstrong. Too proud. I cannot reach him. A long silence. You could teach him, Daigo adds. Better than I can. Kenji studies the sword on the mat. And if I refuse? Daigo meets his gaze. Then I'll ask again. Tomorrow. Or the next day. The sword of memory. After Daigo departs, Kenji sits for some time with the sword still on the mat. He does not unwrap it. Not yet. Instead, he traces the cloth with his fingers, as though trying to read its pass-through texture alone. He thinks of the boy he once taught. A smile too big for his face. A habit of bowing twice when once would do. He remembers correcting his footwork, over and over. The boy never got it right, but always tried again. Kenji finally lifts the sword and unwraps it. The blade is plain, modest, well cared for. There is no arrogance in its weight. He exhales and says, almost to himself, "You left no noise behind. Only the echo." Then, carefully, he rewraps the sword. Evening on the veranda. That night, he sits on the wooden veranda, watching the moon rise through thinning clouds. The fireflies return, flickering above the moss. His students have long gone home. The DJ is dark. He thinks about the boy he will meet tomorrow. Not the father. Not the ghost of rivalry. Just a boy, another reed in the wind, needing a place to bend without breaking. He takes a slow sip of tea and mutters aloud. If he's anything like his grandfather, I'll need stronger knees and thicker patience. But his smile says otherwise. Part 6. The blade is past, but not the burden. The boy arrives just after dawn. He bows at the gate, but too quickly, like someone who's been told to bow but doesn't know why. He's thin, long-legged, and wrapped in layers too big for him. His hair is still damp from his morning wash. His name is Ren. Kenji watches from the garden bench, teacup in hand, breathing steam and memory. Ren steps forward awkwardly, clutching the cloth-wrapped sword at his side like it might vanish. "My name is Ren Katsa," he says quickly. "My grandfather says you'll teach me." Kenji tilts his head. He says many things. Ren blinks. He does. "Do you want to be here?" The boy hesitates. This is not the script he memorized. I don't know. Kenji stands slowly, brushing dust from his robes. He walks over, crouches to the boy's level, not towering, not judging. Just near. "Then we'll start with something simple. Not with swinging. Not with standing. Just with sitting." The first silence. They sit cross-legged in the DJ. Kenji instructs Ren to close his eyes. To breathe. In. Hold. Out. Like the wind through tall grass. Like waves pulling back from the shore. Ren fidgets. Opens one eye. Peeks. Kenji says nothing. Eventually, the boy settles. Not perfectly, but just enough. When the bell chimes to end their first session, Ren asks, "When do I get to swing the sword?" Kenji smiles. "When you learn how to carry it." Ren lifts the sword slightly. "But I'm already carrying it." Kenji shakes his head gently. "No. You're holding it. Carrying takes longer. Wooden buckets and the art of balance." The next lesson is in the courtyard. Kenji hands Ren 2 wooden buckets, each filled halfway with water. Ren's eyebrows furrow. "I thought we were learning swordplay." "You are," Kenji replies. "You just don't know which kind yet." He instructs Ren to walk the stone path, slowly, steadily, without spilling a drop. For the first 5 steps, the boy wobbles. At 7 steps, he splashes his left foot. At 10, one bucket tips entirely. He groans. I don't understand. Kenji refills the water without comment. Again. This continues. And continues. Eventually, Ren's breathing slows. His shoulders drop. The water stays steady. That night, as the lanterns are lit, Ren sits beside Kenji and asks, "Why does this matter?" Kenji answers with a question. What makes a warrior? The hand or the heart? Ren thinks for a long time before answering. Both. And the spine, Kenji says. Don't forget that. We carry more with our backs than our minds. A story for the young. One evening, as cicadas sing beyond the trees, Ren asks softly, "Did you know my father?" Kenji nods. He trained here. Once. He was clumsy. Proud. Kind. Ren looks down. Grandfather says I should honor him. But I didn't know him. Kenji refills their tea cups. Then honor yourself. And let that honor carry him. They sit in silence, interrupted only by the wind and the quiet gurgle of the kettle. Did you miss your own father? Ren asks after a pause. Kenji closes his eyes. I missed him more after I stopped trying to be him. Ren doesn't fully understand yet. But something in him softens. The last morning of the season. Weeks pass. The leaves begin to curl. The air grows sharper, crisper. One morning, Ren arrives early. He bows slowly, deliberately. He carries his wooden sword across both palms, properly. His feet are light. He steps measured. Kenji watches without praise. Ren performs a kata on his own. Not perfect, but honest. Every move an echo of effort, correction, repetition, stillness. Afterward, Kenji approaches. Hands him a cloth-wrapped bundle, the real sword. You will not unsheath it until you forget why you wanted to. Ren bows, clutching the gift like something sacred. Kenji looks toward the mountains, toward the trees beyond the yard. The sword is never the answer, he says quietly. It's only the question that sharpens you. Closing the gate. That night, as stars blink into view, Kenji steps into the garden one last time. He walks the edge of the stone path barefoot, letting the cold settle in his bones. The lanterns flicker. The DJ sleeps. Somewhere beyond the trees, a boy trains alone. And the old master, once called the Willow Blade, kneels by a stone lantern, bows to the moon, and whispers one final line to the wind. What I could not say with my voice, I taught with my silence. And the wind carries it away. Thank you for joining me on the whimsical and tumultuous journey of a samurai and his trainer in ancient Japan. If you enjoy Background Historian, please subscribe for daily good-hearted historical journeys to put you to sleep. Thank you and have a great night.